Hi, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. My guest today is Darcy Weir. Darcy is a documentary filmmaker who, over the past 2 decades, has chosen to explore some of the most intriguing topics of discussion today, including UFO, cryptids, and even Bitcoin. Can we please welcome Darcy to the show? Hello there.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for having me, everybody. How's it going?
I'm doing all right, my good friend. It's so nice to have you on the show today.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've done an interview. I kind of caught ill with, I think, strep throat or something like that, and just been recovering and then working. So yeah, I really appreciate rescheduling with me, and looking forward to chatting with you.
Thank you very much. When you use the phrase the Dark Alliance, what exactly are you referring to, and who or what do you believe is involved?
Yeah, so the Dark Alliance was actually invented by David Wilcock and Corey Good. And they essentially started writing about this on Divine Cosmos. That would have been David Wilcock, and Corey Good on all of his social media outlets, to describe people that were against them and people that they deemed to be their kind of like social enemies. Um, so if you go back and look at their posts, it was anybody who was skeptical or critical of their stories.
Yeah. How much of the public perception surrounding UFOs has been shaped intentionally rather than originally? Excuse me.
Well, I think there's an intentional shaping that's happened since 2017, right? The intentional shaping has to throw out the word UFO, which for decades was the typical abbreviation for the phenomenon. And the shaping of this subject is we don't know anything about it, but we're willing to look into this now a bit more seriously. I think that, the truth is the powers that be within the DoD and now called the Department of War have known well about this, and they are not sharing that information with the public in a full, transparent way. This has been hidden in classified environments, both intelligence and military, for decades now. And the typical answer to questions about UFOs was there's nothing to see here. And if you were on a trail that actually showed you understood there was something to see here, the typical answer from the military was you don't have the need to know. This has been documented over and over again, and I've shown it in my documentaries, the Secret Space UFOs series that I did. But now it seems that they're trying to show some level of transparency, right? Because obviously the government is at a all-time low in terms of public trust in the United States, in the UK, in Canada. It's everywhere. So I think this transparency is a political game, and I'm skeptical.
Very skeptical. Excuse me. Have you encountered evidence that's changed your own understanding of who controls the narrative?
Sorry, can you read that again?
Yeah, no problem. Have you encountered evidence that changes your own understanding of who controlled the narrative?
Yeah, I think I unveiled some pretty interesting information in the Dark Alliance series most recently, showing that popular entertainment networks were propping up hoaxes. You know, and in the UFO subject, like never before, we have a UFO-tainment aspect to all this. Um, and in that sort of UFO-tainment, you have all kinds of people stepping up to the forefront of this discussion. They're making claims with nothing to prove those claims, right? No facts, no pictures, documents. It's just the era of trust me, bro. And I think that's deeply disconcerting.
I know Les has got a question here. Les Carver. Some of the UFOs could be experimental aircraft, and the reason is the government tries to control both. These are actually UFOs. Excuse me.
Yeah, I would agree, and I did do, I documented sort of the whole thesis behind an experimental craft called the TR-3B, which Edgar Rothschild's Fouché came out in the 1990s, exclaiming that these black triangles were our own. And we now know of black triangle testimony from all around the world, right? There was the Belgian UFO wave. There was black triangles uh, being discussed in briefing documents when David Grush was leading up investigations, a part of the UAP task force. Um, Allegedly, a craft that came right out of the ocean and an F-18 fighter jet photographed it and, tried to keep up with it as it flew off into basically space. Um, these sort of stories have been happening, and we have pictures and videos of black triangles for a long time. Um, it could be a sort of advancement from one of these third-party military contractors and aerospace contractors like Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, Northrop Grumman, um, Raytheon. The list goes on, that may have made a breakthrough in what could be considered something like anti-gravity technology. And like supposedly the TR-3B or one of these black triangles that Edgar Rothschild Fouché was working on had a center anti-gravity type engine that was called a magnetic field disruptor, and it would eliminate up to 98% of the weight of a object through this rotating superconductor engine that it had on board. And then it at the time, supposedly it also had kind of like a hydrogen propulsion thruster on each corner, which would have denoted like these white sort of lights on each corner, and then in the center a big light, which was that sort of anti-gravity type engine. But this is all rumor. I think that there are scientists that were on to this sort of rotating superconductor anti-gravity theory for a long time. Chinese physicist Ning Li went missing. There was Potklanov, who's based out of Europe and did a lot of anti-gravity research in the UK. It would seem that these people were on to something, and who's to say that one of these aerospace companies didn't have somebody like that in their employment and building things.
It just makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Totally.
I know the jolly man here is. Where are we? Cross control, static, evidence, satellites, cigar shaped UFOs. UAPs take up gas in liquid form, then release the additional buoyancy.
Right. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if I think cigar shaped UFOs were the main description for cylinder shaped UFOs previously to 2017.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
then, you know, David Fravor, when he and Alex Dietrich were doing their rounds discussing the Tic Tac UFO, now everybody just says Tic Tacs, right? Which I think is hilarious because these butane shaped or these cigar shaped UFOs were the original description for something that was like that. But yeah, not quite sure what the rest of that sentence is alluding to, but yeah, your guess is as good as mine.
The secret space program has become one of the biggest claims in modern UFO circles. What do you believe is actually supported by evidence?
Yeah, so I think secret space program activities must be taking place because we have a history of a practical space program going into space with mankind with all kinds of satellites um, and technology and autonomous technology too, right? Like a lot of satellites and rovers and stuff are out there. Um, who's to say that some of it's not secret and not completely public, right? And I think that there would be a practical secret space program whenever they're launching, for example, the STS missions, the space shuttle missions that were building the ISS, the International Space Station during the 90s and the 2000s. They had classified payloads all the time. And I show this in a documentary I released called Secret Space UFOs Fast Walkers. There was an experiment where the Air Force crashed I believe it was a upper stage of a rocket or even a satellite into the moon. And it was called, I think it was called like the Bell experiment.
Oh, yeah.
And this is rumored to have been a test to see if, because they placed all of these sensors on the moon to look for seismic activity or to look for the composition of the moon, to understand what's at the center of this thing. And apparently, when things have crashed into the moon, it rings like a bell. So
Echoes.
it definitely has an odd composition, which some people would think, oh, the moon is probably hollow and there's probably structure and secretive things that are coming out of there. I don't doubt that. I think that there's probably good reason for that. But back to your question about the secret space program, I think what some things have been professed to be true by the more trust me bro generation of Gaia entertainers. Within that secret space program group, I have a hard time believing those things because, first of all, it wouldn't be considered a secret space program if you had these people going out there and saying, I was, in space with blue 8-foot bird people and I fought on your behalf and did missions in the Kuiper belt and yada yada for 20 years. And then I was age regressed back to my, teenage self. I think if you are a real whistleblower for something that's really going on, you probably wouldn't get that far and become famous on a pseudo spiritual UFO network. I think they would stop you in your tracks before you actually got some real truth out. And whistleblowers do get stopped in their tracks or go missing or, unalived and so on.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real problem, and why there is a push in the United States on Capitol Hill right now for whistleblower protections. Look at the guy that was trying to testify against Lockheed Martin, that whistleblower. He died mysteriously the week he was supposed to go to court. And that was not going to be testimony about a secret space program. That was about, some alleged fraud and, you know, scandals that are going on within the aerospace and government interconnected environment. So, yeah, I guess the secret space program, there has to be something there. But I think a lot of the stuff that's taken over the conversation is sensational, and a lot of it is nonsense.
I know you talked about that. Leslie's in chat just saying, do you think that the German Locardo was what turned up in the Nevada desert in the 1970s?
So the Nazi Bell would be a really good example to me of a pre-secret anti-gravity program. That would have been something that maybe the Americans absorbed during Project Paperclip, finding scientists that were working on that type of project post World War II, and that's where they really, embarked on serious underground or behind the scenes anti gravity testing. But I don't know that that would be the object that was seen in the Nevada desert in the 1970s. I don't know.
I know Steph was just saying here, the Nuremberg trials was an absolute joke. Half of the Nazis ended up working for the American government.
Yeah, well, certainly Werner von Braun, who created the V 2 rocket, and was responsible for bombing half of, like, successfully bombing half of the United Kingdom. Um, he never went to trial, and he lived and prosper over the United States and started the NASA space program. So I would agree with that sentiment.
What evidence would you need to see before accepting extraordinary claims about secret bases, off world operations, or non human technology?
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So, um, some kind of evidence would even be nice. I think that there could be something to some kind of anomalous structures being out there in our solar system on the moon, for example. Carl Wolf talked about this, somebody who worked in the 1960s for the Air Force and repaired sort of printer equipment for the NSA, apparently, and at an NSA base saw these large high-res images that were beaming back from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter to find places for, um, the astronauts to land on the moon later. And there were structures, he said, large kind of football field buildings and what looked like dishes and towers and stuff. And that kind of freaked him out, right? Because this wasn't something that was ever broadcast on news. He died, unfortunately, of a very sort of random accident. He was hit by a car on his bike. It's too bad we don't have him to discuss these issues today, especially with everything that's going on in terms of like the disclosure movement and whistleblowers coming forward.
Could the truth be stranger than mythology, or has the mythology become an obstacle to discovering the truth?
I think that mythology could become an obstacle from the truth because people, we're very tribal in nature, people, right? Since before, uh, you know, widespread religion, we were hunter gatherers and we would gather around a campfire at night to guard the rest of our tribe. And oftentimes we would tell stories to each other to kind of keep each other awake and psych each other out. Sometimes those stories were mythological in nature. They were pseudo spiritual, and they had elements of fear to keep people awake and alert, well on guard. Sometimes the stories are true, right? Like, don't go to this area of the woods because this is where a bear's den is, or something like that, right?
Mm.
For the latter story that's true, somebody eventually would go to that area of the woods and they would find this bear's den, right? So the truth always in time will be told, I think. Some elements of truth will come out. But if no truth ever comes out, then some people are just being guided by pure mythology. And yeah, even in 2026, that seems to be the standard.
What is the single most misunderstood aspect of the secret space program?
I think the most misunderstood aspect would be the idea that we're in league with a galactic federation. You can actually see that story came from the Space Brothers era of ufology back in the 1950s. And it was where UFOs had humans coming off of them, right? This was before grays and reptilians and all that stuff were really spoken about as much. You only start to see that come out in later decades, like the 80s, 90s, David Icke and stuff like that, saying that, the world is run by an evil reptilian race and such. But the Galactic Federation was something that was born pretty much in the 1950s, and it has evolved over time. And science fiction has been written into the sort of mythology of this quite often. I mean, there's a Galactic Federation in Star Trek, and Gene Roddenberry has, that story has been told over and over again on TV and film. But people think that, that is the truth. And I think if you look at Earth and how disorganized and adversarial we are to each other, and we're all human, imagine how difficult it would be to organize a bunch of aliens with humans. You know what I mean? It just doesn't seem to make logical sense to me. It seems to look more like a science fiction LARP that's playing out in the UFO community. And I worry that people are being taken advantage of because of that. But this is also part of the secret space program mythology. One second, just got to plug my camera
in. Yeah, I know that. Yeah. Can the UFO community become a kind of belief system or even cult like in a certain circumstances?
Yeah, 100%. I think there are UFO cults in 2026 as we speak. And I think a lot of that is driven by these entertainment networks that prop up certain thought leaders. And those thought leaders then, because they have essentially this great marketing backing, a network that has reach of millions of people, um, it allows for cult leaders to take roots and garner fame, fortune, and control over people's minds, really. So, yeah, I think that is a problem going forward. And you see the infighting, and you see how people coordinate and attack each other online and social media and such, because they come from these like backgrounds. They come from these followings, and I've even had people come after me because of some of my work.
Oh, you will do. I think everybody always seeking. I'm not saying revenge, but they always have different opinions about you, and you just got to be careful what you write down on social media. We all have that, don't we?
I think the cult leaders should be careful about what they write down, because often they're making predictions of cataclysmic ends to our lives. And what you typically see with that type of person is they push a fear and love narrative, right? They
Mm.
say, oh, at this point in time in 2026, there's going to be, mass UFO contact, and it's going to bring about the apocalypse or something. That that time is revered, and people spend their money to follow these people, pay for their conference tickets, go to their seminars, all this stuff. And the following doesn't allow people to be skeptical about these predictions and stuff. Um, and then the love portion of what they profess is that oftentimes these cult leaders offer kind of like a spiritual protection or some kind of ascendancy to rise up and escape the cataclysm. You see this happen over and over again. And the love side of that is what they sell within their brand to garner, your money and attention.
Oh, definitely. I know Steph in chat room was just saying, yeah, Joseph Mengele ended up in South America with over 2,000 other Nazis. They created a German Alpine village, apparently, on the tourist trail.
Wild. Did not know that.
Darcy, have you ever personally had to change your mind about something you once believed in?
Yeah. I think when I was younger and I first started this research, I was fully engrossed in everything that was put out there. I believed that, the Phil Schneider story was 100% true. But, years later now, I realized that it's not all true. And a lot of it was that sensationalism that you see still in the community today that is sold as truth, but is completely unverified. So, yeah, we had to be wary of that.
I can imagine. So. Could the biggest threat to UFO research actually come from within the UFO community itself?
Yeah. Like, I think a lot of the aspects we've talked about already, the cultism, the weaponization of people against each other, um, the feuds, the lack of discernment, all of that stuff is a threat to the betterment of people, right? So, for sure.
Where do you think ufology stands right now compared where where we was 10 to 20 or 30 years?
I think it's obvious that this subject is extremely mainstream right now. So the comparison in terms of the discussion and the stigmatism around it has reduced quite a bit. Um, yeah, I mean, back in the 1940s and 50s, if you said that you saw a UFO publicly and you garnered attention for it, you would be labeled a crackpot. In other words, insane or an idiot, kind of.
Yeah,
Nowadays, Air Force personnel, intelligence officers, military folks from all walks of life have come forward and said, they've they're an experiencer, right? They've seen UFOs, they've had experiences, and it seems to be something that is very widespread now. So I think it's a good thing. It broadens the ability to discuss this.
yeah. Are governments finally treating the subject seriously then, or simply changing language about it?
Well, yeah, I do worry about the government changing the language about it because it ends up just it looks like a coercive exercise, but at the same time, it helped the subject go a bit more mainstream and allowed, UFO had a built up stigma and sort of taboo, um, I guess, like social residue connected to it, right? And now UAP is more scientific and mainstream. So I think that's there's some good and bad with that.
Oh, I think definitely. We have heard about disclosure for decades. What would genuine disclosure actually look like?
Well, I think it would be an admission from the standing president of the United States, and they are releasing files, regardless of their quality or authenticity. It looks like a transparent move. So it's also releasing information about the subject. But genuine disclosure would be admitting that you've been part of the cover up. And the cover up, whereas Stephen Bassett has called it the truth embargo regarding UFOs and UAPs, has been going on for like 8 decades.
Hmm.
So you would have to admit that there was activities preventing this from going public or allowing it to be um, discussed in the scientific community or allowing it to be something less stigmatized socially.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Because if tomorrow the government announced that no human intelligence is real, what would actually change?
Well, I think socially that change has allowed people to discuss this more openly, right? So that's a good thing. But like I said before, if they don't have the ability to admit that they've been part of a cover up, it doesn't change much. It just shows that they're willing to play in this arena of discussion.
Yeah, yeah. I know a Dragonborn here. I'm going to fetch one of my friends in here. To be fair, where the Pentagon disclosure footage was shown, Paul Sinclair as better. That's my
Send me
friend.
some.
Paul.
Send me some of Paul Sinclair's footage. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, yeah. I do a lot of research with Paul,
Oh, okay.
so I know. Um, change the subject a little bit here.
Sure.
Who or what are the men in black?
I think Nick Redfern has covered this subject really well. He's also from your side of the pond. But to me, the men in black quite literally are a force for cover up. They are a group of people that are willing to keep the truth from the public by any means necessary. Um, and we've heard about different versions of these sort of men in black um, sightings or experiences from people that have seen genuine UFOs or been involved in the UFO um, topic in some way. So to me, the men in black are human from different intelligence or security agencies that are there to threaten, intimidate, and remove evidence if necessary from experiencers. That could be the CIA, could be the FBI, could be Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Richard Doty even admitted in a documentary I made called Who Saw the Men in Black that he was part of the cover up and it was his job to intercept people that had photos or some kind of evidence of a UFO. And oftentimes he even said that UFO was really their experimental aircraft that was observed by civilians. And they were trying to get rid of that information from going public. You even have, I think his name was John Callahan. This was an individual who worked for the FAA. And, he came out in Dr. Stephen Greer's early 2001 disclosure project. John said that he was part of the investigation of the JAL, Japan, I think it was the Anchorage, Alaska, JAL Airlines UFO incursion or encounter. As they were flying in that area, this massive craft was observed in the sky. They said it almost like the size of a miniature sun. It took up a huge part of the sky. And they were evading this, and two smaller objects emitted from this. They were beaming light into their flight cabin. And to get away, they were doing large circles in the open air. The FAA and personnel got these reports from the pilots, and everything was being discussed. And that same week, the CIA showed up at their office and called a special meeting for all the people involved in that investigation in the FAA. And he kept a copy of those reports and everything that happened to do with that incident, luckily, but he took another copy to that meeting, and they confiscated all the information. They threatened everybody in that office and said, "You are not to speak about this ever again. This didn't happen." So to me, that's kind of like a man in black encounter, but at a certain level. They sent the CIA because that is a place of authority, so to speak, for an FAA personnel to say, okay, yes, take this information. I'm not going to say anything. But obviously, it wasn't enough for John Callahan to stay quiet about it. So you have that, and it's like different layers. If you're just a civilian, maybe they only send the FBI, and so on. It just depends where you are in the pecking order in society. Maybe they send Richard Doty, but there are tales of other spookier encounters with men in black that seem almost inhuman. And I think that's more of a Nick Redfern area of discussion. I haven't documented that well. I did cover at least like one story in my documentary that seemed like something spooky. But there are videos and pictures out there of people that say they've encountered Men in Black, and
True.
the people in those pictures or videos look somewhat ghoulish. Like they don't have eyebrows, they don't have hair, they look like twins. Sometimes there's more than one man in black that show up to these experiencers. So, yeah, I believe it's possible that maybe those are a level of information suppression force that maybe don't come from an agency and are from some other layer to this phenomenon.
Janice has just said something in the chat room. It's about me. Because I had my own encounter with Men in Black in 2017. I had a visit from them myself.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
in
very
2017, there was a lot going on in around Briglington and surrounding areas. Me and Paul had seen different activities. Seen a triangle in the sea, going out to sea. We've seen red, like a, should I say, 200 foot by 50-foot object on the side of a cliff. What was red? There 1 second, gone the next. There were vehicles surrounding Briglington, surrounding areas at one time. I think they were expecting something to appear. They were, I can't remember the name of these vehicles. They had big radar dishes on the back of them. They were surrounding quite a big area, Briglington, about a 30-mile radius. And they were parked in different areas because people kept seeing these vehicles around at that time and saying, Paul, what's these vehicles all around? Anyway, Paul went and found one of them, and there were American vehicles when it turned out, and they were parked all over the place. But we'd seen a lot in 2017. We had an encounter with a Black Panther as well. Both me and Paul saw that in the road as we were coming down from the bird sanctuary. And I had a knock on the door. I was dog sitting for a friend of mine at the time and didn't think no of it. But leading up to it, should I say a week before, I was looking out the patio doors and thought I saw a man with a strange hat on. And you're thinking, what the bloody hell's that? And at that time, this guy had got 9-foot panels round his garden, so nobody could get over. So I opened the door and sent dog out, and it ran round and barked and barked. And I had a quick look, and then in the morning I went to have a look, see if there were any footprints or anything. None at all. And that was leading up to a week before until they knocked on my door, and there were like 2 glass doors. You went through one to another one. And I thought, that's strange. What's these policemen doing here? When I opened the second door, there were 2 men in black there, straight in front of me. I didn't know what to make of it. I was flabbergasted. Didn't expect anything like that. Why me?
Maybe because you were covering some UFO information at the time.
Well, that's what I was saying.
UK.
In all this, you've seen too much and all this carry on. And what you've been seeing is not true. And then one of them just leaned over and just said, we are watching you. And I tried to look, because he had his glasses on, but his face looked a bit porcelain. Looked very strange, his face did. And then he just got up after saying that, and they walked away. So I went straight back in the house, locked the door, went inside, ran upstairs to the front room, bedroom, and looked out. They'd gone, vanished, completely vanished, gone. Anyway, lots of things happened that night. And in the morning, I got up and all lights in the house had gone off. Don't know why. I went to check the board, what was in the cellar, and they seemed to be on. But when I flicked and flicked, lights came back on again. So when I got into town, I rang Paul up and I said, "Look, Paul, I've had this thing last night. I don't know what to make of it." And I was working at a charity shop at that time, and he went, "Right, leave it with me." And he went up to where I was dog sitting and knocked on every door down the road to see if anybody had had any CCTV cameras on. Not one person had one on.
Interesting.
Strange, isn't it?
Yeah, really weird.
So
There,
when we talk about Men in Black, I had that. I still think about it now after all them years because you always think, why me? Did I see too much or
yeah.
what?
And I think there's a lot more stories like that of people having Men in Black encounters. I haven't gone over everything, but I've kind of gone over the suppression of information with regards to um, witnesses and then Men in Black sightings. So I believe you.
I thought it
You
was
know, I
very
believe it.
intimidating at the time,
Yeah, that's the typical
trying to
report.
frighten me off. And yeah, I suppose it did do for a couple of weeks, but I just got on with life. So it's too short, my life is. I just want to get on with it. Started going back out again with Paul and all over the place. I just thought if they're following me, they're following me.
Fair enough. Life is too short, but yeah,
But they do intimidate a lot of people,
that's what I hear.
really frighten them,
That's what I hear.
where they don't want to do anything again. They're too frightened of going out. I think you've just got to try and get on with life if you can, because they'll
100%.
destroy your life completely.
Yeah, I'll let it traumatize you forever. That's the whole purpose.
Oh, yeah. Where does it stand with you about these UFOs and about disclosure? Do you think we're ever going to get it then?
Well, I don't think we'll ever get like true disclosure because it would require an admission of wrongdoing from the powers that be, being the military and intelligence community that's kept a tight lid on this for a long time. So they'd have to admit wrongdoing, whether that's hurting people physically or mentally. You know, a good example of that is Paul Benowitz, right? The Air Force and sending out Richard Doty to intercept him, you could argue was, a manipulation that led to this man, his whole life kind of crumbling. He had a psychotic episode later and kind of everything fell apart. But on top of that, just the actual subject is so obscured with misinformation and disinformation that and that typically is the stuff that everybody wants to discuss because there's like this marketing engine behind misinformation and disinformation. There's major well-funded organizations that push this stuff and make people believe the disinformation and misinformation over anything that's, well documented. That has me worried that, disclosure wouldn't even really matter because the, let's say, the cult of personality and the sensationalism has already won.
Les is just saying here, releasing information in a paper blizzard can obscure facts rather than elucidate them. Example 9/11, the report said nothing.
Right. So I guess that would be kind of like a contradiction because instead of a paper blizzard 9/11, you got a paper nothing burger. But yeah, I think that there can be false transparency, right? There can be releases of information that are birds, balloons, and prosaic things, which we're seeing now with the Department of War. A lot of that stuff that they're releasing. There are some interesting documents that apparently come from the FBI that look at credible activity or UAP investigation, UFO investigation. I think it's just how people are able to discern and validate real factual information. That's what's the most important.
Yeah. Just want to ask you about Pascagoula,
Yeah.
1973, the case that will not go away. Let's go back to October the 11th, 1973. Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker. I interviewed Charles Hickson before he died many years ago.
Nice.
Are fishing in Pascagoula, Mississippi, when it makes this case important for more than 50 years. You know, 200 fishermen reported being taken aboard a strange craft and encountering unusual beings. Do we actually know what happened on that night?
Well, I think the thing is about their case is that we'll know their testimony, but those men will only be the ones that ever really truly knew what happened to them that night, right? We do have facts and clues that point to a UFO wave happening over Mississippi at the time because
Yeah.
there were dozens of witnesses, right? I did this documentary series with Philip Mantle,
Oh,
who's
yeah, Philip.
also on your side of the pond.
Yeah, great, Philip.
And, I had no idea before speaking with him and hearing the full history of this case that there were dozens of witnesses that saw UFO activity in the skies the nights leading up to and the nights after the Pascagoula 73 abduction with Calvin Parker and Charlie Hickson. So to me, there's something definitely was anomalous going on. I think there's no shadow of a doubt in my mind about that. There's pictures and film actually from around that time that show activity in the sky. And then all the different credible observers, the sheriff, Fred Diamond, who recorded the secret tape of them talking to each other
Oh,
when
yeah.
they were in the police station that night after they were abducted. He even said to the newspaper that he saw UFOs in the sky the nights leading up to that incident. So it was just all kinds of people. I think the interesting thing too is that Calvin Parker was very quiet about it for many decades. He didn't really talk that much. He would do the occasional appearance on television. But it only really happened more and more as he got older.
Mm.
And his story also changed a bit. Charlie Hickson, same thing. He talked about that encounter. Then he was carrying around a little rock with him at some of his late lectures and stuff. And he said that, the rock was given to him by the extraterrestrials and it would warm up when they were about to communicate with him and stuff. I don't know. It's just all very interesting. And sometimes when stories change a little bit as people get older, you wonder if they were just trying to create a little bit more for their story to keep it going further.
Yeah, if you could sit down with Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker together today, what is the one question you would love to ask them?
Where do you think these occupants of these craft that you met are actually from?
Yeah, it would be a really good question, that would. Definitely. I know Leslie's got another question here before I move on. Oh, excuse me. The CIA and the FBI often work against each other by releasing information that doubts or questions the other.
Interesting. In regards to what?
I presume when they're talking about a certain subject, one says one fact and the other one says another fact. Excuse
Yeah,
me.
I guess if they're not working with each other on something, that could often happen, right? They don't coordinate a release, but I'm sure that they've coordinated some information in the past and worked together as well. You can't say it's always black and white with those two.
No, I know. Um, Darcy, after investigating all these cases, what percentage of UF phenomena do you think were generally understood? Understand?
Well, I think the initial sightings are always the most interesting to me, especially if they're mass witness sightings. So I would even call the Pascagoula incident a mass witness sighting. When I first heard about this story, I thought it was just two men that came up with an interesting story of being abducted while fishing on a river. But it turns out there was multiple witnesses to what had happened leading up to and after. Um, Westall 66, Australia, near Melbourne.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Also, a mass witness daylight sighting, hundreds of people, both children and adults. The Iranian 1976 incursion, where a whole city of Tehran had a blackout and saw these UFOs being intercepted by Air Force aircraft. You know, a lot of these sightings have happened throughout history. The Ariel school phenomenon, it just goes on and on. Even James Fox's well documented the Varginha incident in Brazil. It seems that there's like this otherworldly aspect to the phenomenon. Like there's something that looks like it's not made by mankind and it's an anomaly. And, you know, even the Phoenix Lights incident to me, this football field size craft was flying over Nevada and Arizona. And thousands of witnesses to that, right? I would conclude that we understand maybe we're not the top of the, intelligence pecking order in the universe. And there's possibly an intelligence that's visited our planet. That's what I would say is a general consensus amongst people that are looking at this subject. But who they are, where they're from, what their true intentions are with, coming and visiting this planet, I don't know.
Very strange. Oh, the jolly man here was just saying something like 666% of BBC fact checkers have contacted the Samaritans in the last 33 days.
Okay.
Very strange.
Very strange.
Right. What's the biggest UFO claim you've encountered that you believe is simply wrong?
I would say the secret space program incarnation that's played over and over on Gaia TV with Bluebird people and a Galactic Federation and 20 in back stories.
Right. Why is that then?
Because there's absolutely no proof. And it also mirrors science fiction and other stories that have been part of this lore, but seem to be borrowed into a greater kind of live action role playing storytelling.
Finally, 50 years from now, when historians looking back at this period of UFO research, what do you think they will say we got right? And what will you say we completely misunderstood? Oh, excuse me.
I think what we got right is that maybe we're not alone in the universe, but completely misunderstood. I don't know yet. I mean, other than the things I've already said, I think are pretty suspect tonight.
Right. If you could strip away the believers, the skeptics, the mythology, the government secrecy, excuse me, there is some in my throat, sensationalism, and the fear, and what we're left only with evidence, what do you think we're actually looking at? Excuse me.
I think we're looking at a mixture of our own secret anti-gravity projects that are being, carried out and tested. Sometimes people witness, and we're confused or things are misinformed about that. But maybe a small percentage also, like some of the encounters I talked about, are also of unearthly origin or non-human origin. And I'm very open to that as well.
What do you think aliens want from us?
No clue. I mean, there's people that hypothesize that they're here to, harvest genetic material. I guess there would be a scientific fact finding side to their mission, just as if we went to another planet and saw a species that wasn't us, maybe we'd want to research them too. But, there's people that say there's invasion aspects of why they're here and hybridization programs. I don't know. I think that's part of the greater mystery.
Do you think we are part alien ourselves?
I think we're definitely bald higher primates. How we got to the state we're in, I have no idea. I think science is still trying to figure that out. I wouldn't be against the idea that maybe we're genetically manipulated by a higher intelligence. That would be interesting if we find that out one day. But it's all theoretical at this point, right?
Yeah, yeah. What you got planned for the future for yourself then? More documentaries?
More documentaries. Yeah, I'm working on some other stories and some stuff that's theoretical and possible in terms of the UFO phenomenon, and then some stuff where, I'm also doing a bit of a deep dive on a hoax.
Oh, very interesting. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to give you some information?
Yeah, they can check me out on YouTube at Occult Journeys. My X handle is at Occult Journeys, Darcy Weir Films on Instagram, and my website, occultjourneys.com, has a lot of my films. They're posters. If you click on the poster, oftentimes it'll take you through to a page where you can watch the film for free. And if you search my name on Amazon Prime, YouTube, and many other streaming platforms like Tubi TV, Apple TV, you'll see my catalog of films come up and you can watch away.
Yeah, I've done loads of documentaries. What's your favourite documentary you've done out of all the lot?
I mean, I have favorites I got to make the Transmedium documentary, which I spoke with Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet and Mark D'Antonio and Jim Goodall and all these people that have looked at ocean anomalies and the idea that some USO activity is out there. I really enjoyed making that. I really enjoyed making the Puerto Rico documentary with a guy named Andy Marcial, and finding out about the Aguadilla 2013 footage. Yeah, secret space UFOs, looking at all this NASA history and UFO activity in space and NASA's kind of history with that. Yeah. And denying it existing has been really interesting. And yeah, just been doing this for a while, and there's favorites that I've had throughout the whole journey.
Ever thought about writing books then?
Yeah, I think I'd write a book to sort of summate my experience researching and interacting with people in this community over the past few decades. Like since 2009, I've been really spearheading these documentaries and looking into this stuff. But yeah, no thoughts
When you
of.
talk about this, what's a typical day like for you then?
Well, I work. I've been working recently, kind of like a 9 to 5 thing, plus my film work. I'm just very busy. I'm actually working on an app as well right now, developing an app. So I just keep really busy. My typical daily is wake up and get stuff done, and I just kind of cross things off my list as I go.
Must be very busy and enjoyable for you.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say so. It's
Do you
been.
like getting out and about as well?
Sorry, what's that?
Do you like getting out and about and going to different locations?
Of course, yeah. A lot of my documentaries, I'm traveling to make them. I'm going to speak to people in their area of the world. For example, Pascagoula, I traveled out to the UK and I interviewed Phil in his home for a story that happened in Mississippi, right? Just because he was like a lead investigator this late in his life on Charlie Hickson and Calvin Parker. But I traveled to Puerto Rico to make that. I traveled all around the US to make Transmedium. Yeah. I love traveling and interviewing these people as I go.
Thank you. Well, yeah, it's been very interesting tonight. I've loved it interviewing you. John Allen's he's from Australia. But great show, worth waking up at 3:33 a.m. in Australia to catch the live broadcast. With
Awesome. G'day, mate.
Good day, mate. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Yeah, so thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Sorry we had to postpone, but thanks for having me and everybody that's taking part in the conversation. I appreciate you and happy to connect in the future.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, thank you to everybody in the chat room as well. It's always nice to have some more questions in the chat as well.
Awesome.
Yes, well, thank you again, mate. It's been lovely. I've enjoyed that tonight.
Thanks for having me again, and take care, Bob.
Hey, you take care as well, mate.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody have a lovely weekend. Bye for now.